Hello and welcome back to Underlab. Sans and Papyrus are two of the most popular characters in Undertale, mostly due to how cool Sans is and how funny Papyrus is. Or was it the other way around? Regardless, it's no surprise that the two of them have some of the most complex theories written about them, thanks to their popularity. The following theories I'd like to explore are almost entirely based on speculation and conjecture. That isn't to say there isn't a shred of truth to them, of course. There's a deep underlying mystery within Undertale that still has yet to be answered, and the relation between the two brothers may be a part of it. Well, let's take a look. Firstly, let's take a look at why they're believed to be brothers to begin with. It probably seems pretty obvious, though it will help to contrast the differences between them that we look at later on. The most blatant indication that they're brothers is that they call each other brother, which is probably more than enough to confirm that they're siblings for most people, I'd imagine. But let's press on regardless. The two are clearly extremely fond of each other and rarely appear without the presence of the other, with a few exceptions, such as the meals out with Sans and the date with Papyrus. They both appear to be skeletons, the only skeletons in the game, suggesting that they have some sort of relation. Any monster that I can think of that has a similar appearance to another is also related to them, for example, the Dreamer family. They're both found in Snowdin, working as sentries, they both live in the same house, they care for one another even if they don't always show it, and they both have a bona fide understanding of bone puns, even if one of them hates them, and the other one loves them. Essentially, they're just like most siblings in real life. Not always on the same page, but deep down they appreciate one another. What then could possibly indicate that they're secretly not related? Well, let's start with the superficial differences. I'm not saying any of this indicates that they couldn't be related, but they're the beginnings of extreme deviations from one another, the likes of which you might not expect from two brothers. As I mentioned before, Sans loves his bone puns, whereas Papyrus clearly hates them. This hardly means anything by itself, but there is a trend of Sans being a little more on the ball than Papyrus is. Sans is always doing things that Papyrus has no idea or understanding of, which is a little odd. You'd think that they'd share what they know more often, being brothers and all. Then there's the physical differences. While Papyrus is lanky and tall, Sans is the complete opposite, being stunted and short. Once again, this hardly invalidates them as brothers, it's just a little curious. Why does Sans have pupils still, while Papyrus doesn't? It could be something magical, or simply a design choice, or something else. Why is Sans so much more powerful than Papyrus? I know it's through karmic retribution that Sans does most of his damage, but how does he have access to that ability when no other monster appears to? How and why can Sans use Gaster Blasters? All Papyrus can do is throw bones at you. Very big and painful bones, but bones nonetheless. What I'm getting at is that Sans appears to be in a league all of his own. He's far more powerful than Papyrus, seems to be a lot more knowledgeable on certain matters than any other monster, and is in many ways a complete enigma of his own. When we take all of that into consideration, it becomes a little more difficult to accept that they're brothers. Does Papyrus really just ignore it all, or is Sans simply that good at keeping it a secret? That's the premise with which we'll investigate the possibility that they are in fact more than simple brothers. Remember, a lot of the following is based on almost pure speculation. Now there is evidence to suggest these things, otherwise I wouldn't bring them up in the first place. However, it's mostly dependent on your interpretation of the facts. If you've watched my Everything There Is to Know About Sans video, you'll know that Sans has a peculiar connection to the enigmatic WD Gaster. While the link is tenuous, Sans appears to have documents from Gaster within his private room, as well as the ability to use weapons called Gaster Blasters. It seems that of all the characters in Undertale, Sans is the only one who likely knows anything about Gaster. Papyrus, meanwhile, shares none of these connections, with a single exception. In the mysterious darker yet darker message left by Gaster, Gaster asks, "What do you two think?" If we could just work out who the two people he's referring to are, we'd likely be well on our way to solving the mystery. For the sake of it, let's suggest several possibilities. It could be in reference to Sans and Papyrus. If we say that the Mystery Man sprite is indeed Gaster, it could be argued to resemble a skeleton. As I suggested earlier, all monsters of the same species in Undertale appear to be related. Therefore, a logical conclusion to come to would be that Gaster is Sans and Papyrus's father, therefore making them brothers. It's extremely difficult to be sure though. Another possibility is that rather than Sans and Papyrus, it's Sans and Alphys. Sans and Alphys appear to know more about science than any other monster in Undertale, so it makes sense that Gaster would be showing them his experiment. with Sans seemingly having such a convoluted tie to Gaster, and Papyrus apparently not knowing a thing about it. Is it possible that there's no real relation between them both? I've seen it suggested that Sans and Papyrus are clones, or the remains of Gaster split into two different personalities. Technically, this isn't all that impossible, considering what we know about Undertale. It is possible for the ashes of a monster to carry a part of their personality onto whatever their ashes fall upon. For example, Asriel became Flowey. What if Gaster's ashes fell in two separate halves on two different skeletons? That would explain why Papyrus is eccentric and comical, while Sans apparently has knowledge of quantum physics and time travel. Quite the contrast. This only works, of course, if we believe that Gaster is dead. For all we know, he still exists in some form or another. Tying back to my very first theory about the undead monsters potentially being former humans, we can only question Sans and Papyrus' origin. Apparently they just showed up in Snowdin one day. That's a little odd, all things considered. Where did they come from then? Are they reanimated skeletons, or are they parts of Gaster? Truthfully, there isn't really an answer out there, but we can always speculate. If we accept that they're brothers, however, it seems that Sans keeps a lot of secrets from Papyrus, or Papyrus at the very least takes very little interest in Sans' activities. Personally, I'd like to say that they are brothers. There isn't too much convincing evidence to suggest otherwise. However, it's always worth keeping an open mind, and some of the fan theories out there relating to these two could explain where Gaster went. One way or another, it just exposes how mysterious Sans is yet again. I guess we'll all know the truth when we also know the truth about Sans. Well, that's it for now. It's very hard to explain what's up with Sans, because like a lot of things in Undertale, it really is a mystery, likely left intentionally up to the player's interpretation. Maybe it's all just a coincidence, of course, and really means nothing. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.